On a mysterious night while it was raining after the war had ended, a group of soldiers stood in the cemetery, with a young boy named Ray standing before the grave of a leader. He was deeply saddened by his death, recalling the leader's final moments before he died, with blood pouring from him. As soon as Ray approached him, the leader took his last breath, and Ray was drenched in his blood. At that moment, Ray was overwhelmed with rage at his death, and an immense energy gathered around him, filling the entire place. Years later, Ray had grown up and was about to enter the Magic Academy. As he walked toward the academy, a student tripped and was about to fall, but Ray caught her just in time. The girl was flustered and was about to thank him when she overheard the students behind her saying that he was the only student from an ordinary family, unlike the rest of the noble students at the academy. She was shocked upon realizing that he was a commoner and quickly pulled her hand away from his to avoid being contaminated. Ray remained silent and didn't respond. Shortly after, a student named Albert approached Ray. When Ray extended his hand for a handshake, Albert pushed it away and told him to keep his hand to himself. He scoffed, saying that only nobles were allowed to enter this academy and questioned how a commoner like Ray managed to get in. Ray simply replied that he had come to learn. Albert then moved to hit him, but Ray dodged his attack. Just as a girl named Amelia, the academy's top and most distinguished student, intervened and stopped Albert. She then greeted Ray with a handshake and told him that if he ever needed anything, she would be there for him. Soon after, the students gathered for the opening ceremony, where the academy's headmistress, Abby, gave a speech. She announced, "Arnold Academy of Magic is one of the finest academies in the world. That's why you must work hard to become the greatest magicians." Afterward, the student representative, Amelia, stepped forward to give her speech. Once the ceremony ended, the students headed to their classrooms. The teacher asked Ray to introduce himself, and he told them that he was the first commoner to ever enter this academy. The teacher introduced herself as Miss Gray, and Ray entered the class while Albert fumed with rage. Miss Gray then asked Elena a question about magic ranks. Elena answered, saying there were 5 ranks: bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and finally the great rank. The teacher confirmed her answer and explained that in this world, there were only 7 great magicians, the most skilled in magic. However, only 3 of them were known: Headmistress Abby, the sorceress Carol, and the Iceblade mage, who had disappeared without a trace. The identities of the other great magicians remained unknown. Albert raised his hand and asked Miss Gray why a commoner like Ray was allowed to enter the Magic Academy. The teacher became irritated and firmly stated that those admitted were the ones who passed the preliminary exam and interview, regardless of whether they were noble or commoners. A little later, the magic lesson began. Miss Gray explained that magic in this world was based on a substance called prima materia. Magic was performed by encoding the prima materia and then manifesting it to bring the spell to life. The students then began practicing magic, but Albert grew increasingly furious about having to share a class with a mere commoner like Ray. After a while, Ray wandered around the academy and entered the library, where he met a girl named Elisa, a fellow classmate. She told him that her favorite magician was the sorceress Lydia Ainsworth, and that she aspired to be like her. Ray agreed, saying that Ainsworth was indeed the greatest magic researcher, and that she was also his favorite sorceress. Elisa was surprised to find that they shared the same admiration. As she reached to adjust the hood that had fallen from her head, Ray asked why she covered herself like that. She hesitated before saying, "Haven't you noticed that my ears look strange? People always mock me because of them." Ray simply responded, "Not at all. Your ears are beautiful." Elisa blushed at his words. At the end of the school day, Ray headed to the student dorms to sleep, where he met a student named Ivy. Ivy told him, "I don't care whether you're a commoner or not. What matters to me is your strength and physical ability." To his surprise, Ivy realized that Ray was actually strong and muscular. They quickly became friends. Early the next morning, Ray started his day with a run. Along the way, he encountered a third-year student watering flowers named Rebecca. Ray introduced himself, and she responded, "I already know who you are. You're the first commoner to enter our academy." When it was time for class, Ray and Ivy headed to the academy together. On the way, Ivy told Ray that Rebecca came from a noble family, one of the 3 most prestigious noble families at the academy. He also mentioned that Amelia belonged to the highest ranking of the 3 noble families. As they continued walking, Ray asked Ivy to go ahead while he caught up later. Ivy reminded him not to be late since their first class was sword fighting. Ray continued on his way when he bumped into a girl named Clarice. She was about to scold him for not watching where he was going, but then stopped and said, "Wait, are you the commoner student?" Ray confirmed, and Clarice introduced herself. Ray told her that he grew up in the countryside. She then excused herself, saying she was in a hurry, and quickly left. Ray continued on his way until he reached Headmistress Abby's office. Standing before her like a soldier, he said, "It's an honor to see you, Colonel." Abby smiled and replied, "That's enough. I've retired a long time ago. Just call me Abby now." She then looked at Ray fondly and said, "You really haven't changed since you were little." She gazed at an old photograph, recalling their past memories together. The first sword fighting class began, and Ray was matched against Albert. Albert launched an attack, telling Ray that he didn't deserve to be there. Ray blocked his strike, shocking the other students. Enraged, Albert charged at him again, but Ray skillfully blocked the attack and shattered his sword. Albert fell to the ground, completely defeated. At night, Ray and Ivy were doing their exercises before bed, and Ivy asked Ray, "How do you plan to join 2 clubs at the same time? That'll be really tough for you." Ray replied, "I have to give my best effort in this academy." Ray went to the first club, which was for muscular giants known as the Hunters. The club leader told him, "I don't care whether you're noble or commoner. What matters to me is that you're strong with powerful muscles." Ray confidently said, "Don't worry, my muscles are strong." Everyone was shocked by Ray's size and strength. He told them, "I've been training hard in the forest since I was a kid." The club leader then asked him, "Do you have a Golden Hunter license?" Ray replied, "Of course." The leader was thrilled and welcomed him into the club. His friend Ivy, who was already a member, was happy that Ray got accepted. After that, Ray went to the second club, which specialized in plants. The club president was Rebecca, whom he had met earlier. She asked him, "Why do you want to join our club?" Ray answered, "I love flowers and plants." She then said, "But our club doesn't have any boys. Does that bother you?" He replied, "Not at all." One of the members stood up and protested, "We can't let a commoner like him join our club." Rebecca then said, "Fine, let's give him a test. If he passes, he can join." The student took Ray to an old garden and told him, "This garden is full of infertile soil and weeds. We want to turn it into a new garden. You have 1 week to complete the task alone. If you succeed, we'll let you join." On the first day, Ray worked hard, clearing the weeds from the garden. The next day, he started tilling the soil. On the third day, he began building fences inside the garden. Rebecca visited him and thanked him for his effort, giving him sandwiches as a gift. As they sat together, they heard the sound of swords clashing. Looking over, they saw students practicing sword fighting. Rebecca said, "The Magic Knights tournament is approaching." Ray asked, "What is this competition about?" She explained, "It's a tournament to determine the strongest fighter with a magic sword." She suggested that he participate, but Ray said he would think about it. On the fourth day, the garden was finally ready for planting, and Ray had completed all his tasks. The club members were stunned by what they saw and accepted him into the club. At the end of the day, Ray was walking through the garden, thinking about what Headmistress Abby had told him earlier, that a spy had infiltrated the kingdom and that the academy itself might be compromised. She had asked him to inform her if he discovered anything. As he walked, he found Clarice standing off to the side. Embarrassed, she said, "I was just watching this insect. I really like insects." Ray smiled and said, "I love insects too. I don't see anything embarrassing about it. I'd love for us to be friends." She was delighted that he also liked insects and agreed to be friends. The next day at school, Miss Gray asked the students, "Who knows the components of magic?" Ray stood up and answered correctly. Miss Gray was pleased with his response, impressed by his dedication. Amelia and the other students were astonished by his knowledge. Then Miss Gray announced, "Now we have a practical exercise in the forest." The students were all surprised. She instructed them to form groups of 4. Ivy immediately went to Ray and said, "Let's form a team together." They still needed 2 more members. Ray approached Elisa and invited her to join their group. She was happy but hesitated, saying, "I'm weak. I won't be able to help much." Ivy reassured her, "We'll all help each other." A little later, Amelia came to them and asked to join their team. Ray agreed and said, "This spot was reserved for you anyway." The other students stared at their team in disbelief, except for Albert, who was fuming with anger at Ray. All the students gathered at the forest, where Miss Gray explained the exercise. They had to reach the target in the center of the forest and collect as many seals as possible within 24 hours. She warned them, "The forest is full of monsters, so be prepared." Ray's team stood ready, waiting for the signal to begin. Ivy looked at Ray and said, "You don't seem nervous at all." Ray replied, "I grew up in the countryside. I'm used to forests." Amelia suggested we should plan our formation. Ray said, "You and Ivy stay at the front, Elisa stays at the back, and I'll stay in the middle for ambushes. I'm used to these kinds of exercises." When the signal was given, the 4 of them dashed into the forest, following their formation. As they moved forward, a giant insect suddenly appeared, about to attack Elisa. Ray swiftly cut it in half with his sword, leaving his teammates in awe. They continued searching and found their first seal. Meanwhile, other students were also searching for seals. When night fell, Ray and his team sat around a fire. Everyone was impressed by how Ray had taken down down the monsters alone. He told them, "I've been training in forests since I was a child." Amelia looked at him skeptically, unable to believe that all his strength came from mere childhood training. Ray noticed that she was beginning to suspect him. Ivy then asked Amelia, "I didn't expect someone like you from a noble family to team up with a commoner." Amelia responded, "I don't care about noble titles and all that. I worked hard to reach where I am now." Ray then recalled the war from his past. Compared to those days, this forest felt like paradise. That night, while his team slept, Ray stayed awake to guard them. He remembered what his teacher once told him: "Try to hide your true identity from others as much as possible, unless you find friends you can truly trust." The next morning, they suddenly heard someone screaming. Ray left his team and rushed toward the sound, finding Albert in front of a monster, unable to fight back. Ray quickly arrived. The monster lunged at him, but Ray dodged its attacks. He then leaped onto the monster and killed it with his sword. Extending his hand to help Albert up, Albert snapped, "Stay away from me, commoner." A moment later, Ray's teammates arrived and were shocked that he had defeated the giant monster alone. Amelia turned to him and demanded, "Tell me the truth. Who are you really?" As they spoke, a masked figure stood behind a tree, watching them. Suddenly, he shot a magical arrow at the monster's corpse. The monster revived, now even stronger than before, prepared to attack the students. Ray struck at it with his sword, but the monster's body was too tough. Amelia quickly pulled Ray away before the monster could counterattack. Elisa hurled a large rock at the monster, and in that moment, Ray swiftly delivered a final strike, slicing the monster in half. He thanked his teammates for their help, remembering his past with his old squad. Meanwhile, the masked figure continued watching from a distance before leaving the area. Ray's team successfully collected all the required seals. All the students gathered again, and the instructor announced that Amelia's team had won. The other students were upset that Ray, a mere commoner, had won. A little later, we see Ray's mentor, Lydia, seated in a wheelchair, waiting for Ray to arrive. The maid, Clara, went to open the door for him. Ray entered and greeted Lydia, who asked about his well-being and his time at the academy. They sat together, and she said, "I sent you here to inform you about a rumor spreading among magic researchers." She explained, "As you know, when we talk about magic research, we mean research done on magic itself, the code. Since magic originates in the brain, recent studies have begun focusing on the brain, specifically the engram, which is the part responsible for magic. A group called the Eugenics has emerged, aiming to open the brains of magicians to uncover the truth about the engram. They asked me to join them, but of course I refused. You must be careful, Ray." Later, Ray and Lydia took a walk through the forest, reminiscing about their training days. Ray told her about the friends he had made. Lydia then said, "The Magic Knights tournament is starting soon. Won't you participate?" Ray replied, "I won't. I'll just cheer for my friends." She responded, "As you wish. As you can see, I no longer have the strength to protect you." She handed him a book that might be useful for the tournament. On his day off, Ray started his morning run as usual and met Elisa on the way. She was heading to the library, so he asked to join her. When they arrived, they sat and read books together. After leaving the library, Ray saw Clarice and invited her to join them for lunch. The three of them ate together, and Ray introduced Elisa and Clarice to each other. After lunch, Ray bid them farewell and continued on his way. Later, Ray sat with Miss Gray. She asked him about his life at the academy. He replied, "It's going great." She was surprised and said, "I thought you wouldn't like it since you're the first commoner to enter, and the noble students wouldn't accept you." She then told him, "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to come to me." Meanwhile, Albert was training intensely, determined to defeat Ray and swearing revenge. The masked figure watched him from the tree, pleased. The next day, Ray began his morning training with the Hunters Club. Later, he went to the Flowers Club, where he met Rebecca, who showed him a book about magical plants. She then took him to the garden to introduce him to plants that could use magic. Ray was astonished that plants could wield magic and asked her to teach him more about them. Rebecca gladly agreed. Ray then asked to borrow the book, and she allowed it. They also discussed the Magic Knights tournament. Ray told her, "I won't participate. I'll just support Amelia." At the academy, Amelia trained for the tournament and managed to defeat her opponent. She then asked the instructor if she could fight Ray. The instructor said, "But Ray isn't participating." Ray, however, agreed to the duel. Amelia launched a swift attack and said, "You're really mysterious. You're not particularly skilled in magic, yet you excel with a sword." She struck with full force. As Ray fought, he recalled his past training with the sword. Suddenly, he dodged her attack and was about to land a strike, but instead, he let go of his sword and dropped to the ground. The instructor declared Amelia the winner. Amelia looked at Ray and demanded, "Tell me honestly, who exactly are you?" Ray smiled and remained silent. Meanwhile, Albert was seething with rage. Afterward, Ray and his friends went to lunch together. Ivy asked Ray, "How are you so skilled with a sword?" Ray replied, "I trained under a mentor. She taught me swordsmanship, magic, and other skills. She was so strict with me that life here feels like paradise compared to her training." During lunch, Albert approached Ray and said, "I challenge you to a duel." Ray accepted, and they prepared for a sword fight. Ray asked, "What are the rules?" Albert smirked, "There are no rules. Do whatever you want." To everyone's shock, Albert drew a real sword and attacked Ray. Ray swiftly dodged and took his own sword. From the treetops, the masked figure observed the duel with satisfaction. Albert lunged at Ray, yelling, "I will never lose to you. I was born into a noble family, yet my family is minor compared to the others. That's why I vowed to raise my family's status and become the strongest magician. And to do that, I must eliminate you." Albert unleashed magic at Ray, but Ray deflected it with his sword. Albert and the other students were stunned. Ray had nullified magic using only his sword. Furious, Albert attacked with all his strength. He then conjured magic in the form of a dragon to strike Ray, but Ray cut the spell in half. At that moment, Albert collapsed to the ground, surrendering, devastated that he couldn't defeat Ray. Ray turned and walked away. Amelia said, "You must tell us the truth about who you really are." Just as Ray was about to reveal his secret, his teammates suddenly found themselves immobilized by magic. A masked figure appeared, saying, "You're all excellent magicians, but unfortunately, I've decided to sacrifice you for my magic research." The figure removed their mask, revealing themselves to be Miss Gray. The students were in shock. Ray declared, "Now I understand. You're one of the eugenics, aiming to extract the engram from the brains of magicians and students." Miss Gray smirked and said, "Very good. I'm especially interested in your engram, Ray." Ray accused her, "You were planning to kidnap students during the forest exercise. You controlled the monster we encountered." She admitted, "Yes, I was responsible for that." Ray continued, "You also manipulated Albert into fighting me." She scoffed, "Forget about him. He's just a fool. I only used him to buy time and build this barrier around us. Now, I've gathered a large harvest of students at once. With all these brains, my status within the eugenics will rise." Ray clenched his fists in anger and declared, "Prepare for your end here and now." She smirked, "Just for you, I'll study your engram while you're still alive." Miss Gray unleashed 2 fire serpents that chased after Ray. She then taunted him, "Are you just going to keep running? How about I deal with your friends first?" Realizing it was time to reveal his true power, Ray unlocked his seal. Ice suddenly filled the air, freezing the fire serpents in an instant. Ray stood there, revealing his overwhelming power and summoning his ice blades. Miss Gray gasped, How are you the Iceblade mage who disappeared after the war?" Ray calmly answered, "That's right. The title of Iceblade mage was passed down to me from my mentor, Lydia, after the war." Miss Gray, furious, hurled a powerful spell at him, but Ray launched an ice blade and nullified her magic. She gritted her teeth. "Even if you're one of the 7 greats, you won't be able to block this." She unleashed an enormous surge of magic, but Ray blocked it in a split second. He then smirked. "Now, let me show you the true power of the Iceblade mage." As he rushed toward her, Miss Gray panicked and fled. Ray unleashed his ice blades, striking her legs. She kept running, pleading, "Wait, don't kill me. Why not join us? If you let me go, the eugenics will appoint you as one of their leaders. Please, spare me." Ray paused, but Miss Gray took the chance to betray him and launched an attack. Ray deflected it instantly, grabbed his ice sword, and raised it above her. She laughed. "You're going to kill me?" Ray said, "No." She realized he intended to capture her alive. Desperate, she made a final decision. She activated a device implanted in her head. Her body began to overflow with magic, mutating into a monstrous form. She grinned wickedly. "Let me show you just how far my engram research has progressed." At that moment, the barrier around them broke, and Ray and the monster fought with full force. The monster attacked him with its fire magic, but Ray blocked it and revealed his ice blades. The monster then unleashed a massive surge of magic to penetrate Ray's mind, but Ray managed to stop the attack with his blades. However, the ice began to spread over Ray's body. When the instructor attacked him, she realized that he still had not fully mastered his power. She laughed, knowing this was her chance to finish him off. She struck and shattered his ice sword. Ray activated the ice bloom technique, and in an instant, a storm of ice surrounded Miss Gray, transforming into frozen flowers. Meanwhile, Ray collapsed to the ground, exhausted. His friends rushed toward him, but he had already lost consciousness. In his dreams, Ray recalled the past, when Lydia first found him with no family. She took him to her unit, where Abby and Carol asked, "Who is this child, and where did you find him?" Commander Henrik also questioned her. Lydia answered, "I was searching the area and heard a child crying, so I brought him here. He's the only survivor." Later, Lydia told Abby that the government had refused to adopt the child. Abby responded, "The government government probably doesn't want to get involved in any issues. Abby then said, the boy just woke up. Lydia immediately rushed to check on him and found Carol sitting beside him. When they asked his name, he replied, my name is Ray. Lydia said, let's play ball, while Carol took him to read him a story. The next day, Carol protested, saying she wouldn't leave Ray. Captain Corinne told her, that's not possible. Carol argued, I have money. I can feed him. Abby suggested, I think we should send him to an orphanage where they can take care of him. The colonel then asked Lydia, what do you think? Lydia remained silent until she saw Ray standing behind her. She called him over and asked, what do you want to do? Ray held her hand and said, I want to stay with you. Lydia smiled and agreed to take care of him, saying, I'll raise him, and Abby and Carol will help me. The colonel approved, allowing Ray to stay with them. Lydia told him, from now on, you're one of us, and I'll be your mentor. Ray responded, yes, mentor Lydia. 6 years later, a war broke out in the Far East, and Ray fought alongside them using his ice magic. Meanwhile, Lydia and Abby stood before a destroyed site, realizing that it was caused by the immense energy generated by the stress magicians experience in a battlefield filled with death. This overwhelming energy could destroy a magician's mind, making this a risk for any magician in combat. The unit members gathered at their secret base to assess the situation. Commander Henrik warned them, the battle is becoming more dangerous. We may not make it out alive. Captain Corinne told Ray, you're still young. You don't have to come with us. Ray replied, Mentor Lydia taught me to be responsible, and you are all my family. Commander Henrik, Captain Corinne, Abby, Derit, Howard, Mentor Lydia, and Carol, you're all my family, and I have to fight alongside you. Howard reassured him, don't worry, I'll protect you if anything happens. During the battle, Ray ran at full speed toward Howard, who was struck by magic and fell dead. Ray couldn't bear seeing his friend die, and an immense surge of energy erupted from him. Mentor Lydia warned him, you must stop now, or your mind will be destroyed. Suddenly, Ray woke up in the hospital, finding Mentor Lydia beside him. He apologized to her, saying, I unlocked the Iceblade mage's seal even though I still can't control it. She reassured him, it's okay. If I were in your place, I would have done the same. One day, you'll grow stronger and control your power without needing the seal. Ray asked, how are my friends? Headmistress Abby entered and said, they're all fine, thanks to you. You saved them. Lydia then told him, visit me when you've fully recovered. Abby added, I was against you joining this academy because the students here care too much about noble lineage, and a commoner like you would struggle here. But then Lydia personally came to me and asked me to accept you so you could make friends and understand the world. Ray was surprised to learn that his mentor worried about him. Meanwhile, as soon as Lydia left the hospital, she sat alone and cried, relieved that Ray was safe. A little later, Ray's friends arrived to visit him. He apologized for keeping his secret from them, revealing that he was one of the 7 greats, the Iceblade mage. He explained, during the Eastern War, I was fighting alongside my mentor when I suffered a shock. A massive surge of power erupted from me, and I lost control. I don't know what happened next, but when I regained consciousness, everything around me was in ruins. My injured mentor held me in her arms. Ever since then, I've been using a spell to lock my energy to protect myself. Alina said, so that's why you're not good at magic. Ray nodded. Yes, I lost many friends in that battle because of me. I wounded my mentor. I hid my blood-stained past from you and deceived you. My hands are covered in blood. I don't even deserve to be your friend. Amelia firmly responded, we don't care about your past. What matters is who you are now, and you're a kind person. Ivy said, you're my best friend. Elisa added, we won't abandon you. Clarice scolded him, stop saying such nonsense. We are friends. Ray smiled and thanked them for their friendship. That night, while Ray was still in the hospital, Albert visited him. Ray asked, what do you want? Albert said, I came to apologize. Ray replied, I accept your apology. Being born with noble blood and talent is great, but hard work is the most important thing if you want to become stronger. You need to change how you see others. Albert admitted, you're right. What I truly need in life is acceptance, not hatred. Ray said, from this moment on, you'll become stronger, Albert. The next day, Headmistress Abby introduced them to their new instructor, who would replace Miss Gray. It was Carol. Ray was irritated that Carol was their new teacher. Instructor Carol began reviewing the topic of the Magic Knights tournament. She explained that it was a sword-fighting championship held between 3 different academies. First-year students would compete in the beginner category, while second-year students and above would participate in the main tournament. 16 competitors would be selected from the 3 academies. However, since last year's winner, Rebecca, was from their academy, they were allowed to send 6 participants instead of 5. She then gave them information about the other academies and their specialized strengths before dismissing the students to begin their training. Ray and Clarice went to observe the students' training. As they stood there, they both tried to guess which students would win the matches. Each time, Ray's predictions were correct. One of the rounds featured a match between Amelia and another student. Amelia won the duel in just 6 seconds, and everyone was thrilled. However, Ray felt something was off. He thought to himself, for someone like her to win a match in 6 seconds, she should be happy, but it's clear that something important is weighing on her mind. At that moment, Amelia was thinking about her father's words. You are the eldest daughter of the Rose family, the strongest of the 3 great families. Compete as if your life depends on it, especially against the Algren family. Losing to Ariane must not be an option. Meanwhile, Ray was in the Plants Club with Rebecca, who told him about Ariane, the chosen representative of Diam Academy. She was considered the strongest student in her academy. She and Amelia had once been friends, but they had a falling out. Now, the two were expected to compete in the Magic Knights event. Despite Ariane's immense strength, Amelia would certainly be a formidable opponent for her. Ray went back to watching the academy's matches. Amelia defeated all the first-year participants and qualified as one of the 6 students representing the academy. Albert followed behind her, securing second place. Ray and his friends cheered for Amelia, but he soon left them and returned home to grab a book. He then went back to meet Amelia. Standing before her, he said, "Congratulations on qualifying for the next stage. It was an easy challenge for you, which must make you uneasy. You've been thinking about your strength all day. It's written all over you. I'm sure you want to become even stronger." Amelia replied, "Ariane will definitely qualify from her academy, and she is stronger than me." Ray said, "I have a solution for you. There's about a month left before the tournament. I can train you." He pulled out the book he had brought and said, "My mentor gave me this a long time ago. It contains the Ainsworth training camp method. I used it as a child to increase my strength. But it's incredibly tough. The path ahead won't be easy." Amelia responded, "I accept. I'll follow every instruction you give me." She then recalled the first time she met Ariane when they were young. It was during a banquet when Ariane invited her to play. They quickly became best friends, but Ariane was always slightly more skilled than her. Despite this, they cherished their friendship and promised to remain friends for life. But one day, they competed against each other in the Magic Knights tournament. Ariane won effortlessly. After knocking Amelia to the ground, she extended her hand to help her up, but Amelia completely ignored her, turned away, and walked off. She thought to herself, that was the last day we were friends, or maybe not. Ariane was always by my side, encouraging me, pushing me to explore the world. In the end, I was the one who changed, not her. And it was all because of my noble family's authority. That night, she went home and fell asleep. The next morning, she went to meet Ray. When she saw him, he was wearing a mask. He said, "I am not Ray. My name is Instructor White. From now on, I'm your trainer and you are a soldier in training." He ordered her to run 20 kilometers around the academy without using magic or any supporting tools. Amelia followed his command, but it was extremely tough on her. When she finally completed the task, she was exhausted. Ray told her, "Today was just a light day. Tomorrow we begin real training." Days passed, and Ray continued increasing the intensity of her exercises. The students in class began noticing how exhausted she was. Even at night, Ray personally woke her up to continue training. Eventually, she became so worn out that she tried to escape from him. Ray searched for her and, along the way, found Albert sitting alone. Ray asked, "Where are your usual followers?" Albert replied, "I just wanted to be alone for a bit. But I want to ask you something. How can I become stronger? I have doubts in my heart. Even though I train every day." Ray reassured him, "Don't worry. That's just a feeling. You're already stronger than you realize, and I'm sure your strength will continue to grow. So don't overthink it." Suddenly, Ray remembered that he was supposed to be looking for Amelia, so he resumed his search. He went to the library, where he found Elisa and Clarice. He asked if they had seen Amelia, but neither of them knew her whereabouts. So he decided to use his magic to track her. Ray located the place where she was hiding. He found her and said, "I'll be adding a punishment to your training for running away today." Amelia returned to continue her exercises, with Elisa and Clarice standing by to support and encourage her. Meanwhile, Ray disappeared. He disguised himself as a girl and infiltrated Diam Academy to meet Ariane and observe her strength in order to help Amelia. While there, Ray met a young girl named Tiana Algren and learned that she was Ariane's sister. She led him to meet Ariane. Ray began speaking with Ariane, but she immediately said, "Let's get straight to the point. You're not a student at this academy." Ray replied, "You're very sharp. The truth is, I'm a boy and my name is Ray. I'm from Arnold Academy of Magic and I want to challenge you to a friendly match." Ariane agreed, and Ray was shocked by her overwhelming strength. Ariane then asked him, "Are you participating participating in the Magic Knights tournament? Ray answered, no, I'm part of the organizing staff, but I'm training a friend of mine. Her name is Amelia Rose. Arian smirked and said, so that means you came all this way just for her. Ray responded, you're absolutely right. She's going to take first place in the beginner category. Arian replied, I'm looking forward to her defeat. Ray then left to return to his academy. On the way back, he saw a young girl with white hair and red eyes running while crying. He asked her for her name, and she answered, my name is Maria Bradley. Ray said, so that means you're Rebecca's younger sister? Maria replied, yes, I am, before turning away and continuing on her way. The next day, Ray gathered all his friends and took them to visit his mentor. They all introduced themselves. When it was Amelia's turn to introduce herself, Lydia asked to speak with her privately. Meanwhile, Ray went to help his mentor's maid, who told him, the Reapers Guild has started making their move. I don't have confirmed details yet, but their timing is concerning. The Magic Knights tournament is coming up soon, and all the noble families will be attending. You need to keep this in mind and stay alert for any potential danger. On the other side of the house, Lydia spoke with Amelia. She said, I can tell that something is troubling you. Ray has always mentioned you in his letters to me. He knows you're carrying a heavy burden in your heart, and he's worried that it's making you suffer even more. She continued, you already know Ray's past. Right now, he's the strongest magician in the world. He even surpassed me with ease. I taught him everything I could, but I never taught him how to have a human heart. Ray has always been emotionally detached. That's why I made sure he entered the academy, and I'm so proud of him. She then gave Amelia advice. I'll tell you the same thing I told him. I don't know what you're hiding in your heart, and you can keep it buried for the rest of your life. But if you want to change yourself, trust your friends. Trust Ray as well. I promise you, you will never regret it. They both joined the others, and they all had a wonderful day together. The next day, they returned to the academy, and Amelia resumed her training with Ray. They continued their training until the final day before the Magic Knights tournament. Ray stood before Amelia and said, I'm very proud of you. Now we'll do our final training. Your task is to destroy the rose on my uniform. Amelia successfully completed the final test. Time passed quickly, and the next day arrived. The headmistress stood before the crowd and officially opened the tournament. All the students, spectators, and noble families were present. As Amelia made her way to her room, she encountered Ariane. Ariane said, it's been a long time since we last met. It looks like you've changed a lot. She extended her hand for a handshake and said, I'll be waiting for you in the final round. Amelia reached out her hand as well and replied, we'll meet in the final round again, but this time, the winner will be different. The tournament began with students from the various academies competing. The winner would be determined by either destroying the rose on their opponent's uniform or forcing them out of the ring. The first match was between Amelia and a student from another academy. Amelia won in less than 5 seconds. The second match featured Albert, representing Arnold Academy, against Ariane, representing Diam Academy. Their duel was fierce, with intense swordplay. Ariane eventually knocked Albert away and said, it would be best if you surrendered instead of risking your life. Albert responded, if you had said that to me before, I would have given up. But my heart refuses to accept defeat. He charged forward at full speed, managing to disarm Ariane's sword. He recalled Ray's words to him back in the hospital and pressed forward with unwavering determination. However, Ariane then used lightning magic against him, landing a devastating blow that sent him out of the ring. The match ended with Albert's honorable defeat and Ariane's well-earned victory. After the match ended, Ray was walking back to his room when he felt someone watching him. He turned around and saw a massive man who said, come with me. They both headed to the main room where the instructor, Carol, and the headmistress were waiting. The large man introduced himself. My name is Lex. The headmistress then said, let's get straight to the point. The Reapers Guild has infiltrated the Magic Knights tournament. Their goal is to abduct noble students. She ordered Ray and Lex to work together to protect the students. She then told Ray, since their primary targets are the noble students, all your friends will be in danger. The chances of encountering them are very high, and Lex will be responsible for the safety of all students alongside you. The next day, the advanced stage duels for second-year students began. Rebecca had achieved outstanding results and reached the final round. Ray stood in the audience, watching her match with pride. Elisa and Clarice approached him and said, Amelia hasn't left her room since yesterday. From the sound of her voice, she seems to be struggling. At the end of the day, Ray decided to check on her. Standing in front of her door, he said, you don't have to come out, but at least listen to me. I was afraid to try and help you. The closer I got, the more afraid I became, remembering how I once failed to help the most important person in my life. I kept asking myself if I was making the right decision or not, so I kept running away from facing the truth. But now, I want you to tell me, what is it that you really want to do? As he looked looked at the door, he saw her open it. He stepped inside and sat with her. Amelia said, "As you can see, my whole life has been miserable. Everything I've ever done was for my noble family. I gave up my own will and played the role of the eldest daughter of the Rose family, the one who had to excel at everything for the family's pride. I tried countless times until I reached this point, but compared to what you've been through, my struggles mean nothing." Ray told her, "There's no point in comparing people's pasts or their suffering. What matters is that you've put in immense effort despite your hardships." She responded, "I've been hurting for a long time. Every day, I asked myself how much longer I would have to endure this miserable, painful life. But then I met you and our friends. I felt like I had gained something real. If I win this tournament, maybe I can become a different person. But I can't defeat Ariane. I keep trying to be the perfect version of myself, but I can't reach her level. Does my life have any meaning like this?" Ray said, "The fact that you're still alive is meaningful enough. We're human, and we have to find a reason to live. Even if that reason is simply sharing your life with friends who care about you, that's more than enough. I hope we can continue living alongside our friends, and that you'll be with us." He then recalled the last day before the Magic Knights tournament, when they were training together. That was when Amelia had finally mastered her butterfly magic and burned the rose on his uniform. The next day was the final round. Amelia would face Ariane. The arena was filled with excitement. Ray walked over and handed Amelia the rose, saying, "I'm sure you're going to win this match." Amelia headed toward the arena. Just as Ray was about to move, Lex appeared behind him. He said, "The student named Clarice has gone missing, along with 8 other noble students. We need to head underground to rescue them." The two of them immediately set off. At the same time, Amelia stood before Ariane in the arena. Ariane said, "You kept your promise. We meet again in the final round. But today I will win just like last time." Amelia responded, "No, I will win today. I won't keep losing to you. Let's settle this once and for all." The match between them began. Ariane threw her sword into the air and activated her lightning magic. She said, "Let's start at full power right away." She rushed forward at incredible speed, striking Amelia and knocking her to the ground. She attempted to land another hit, but Amelia used her magic to block the attack. She then stood up and declared, "Just like I told you, I will never lose again." Meanwhile, underground, Ray arrived at the location where the kidnapped students were being held. Clarice was among them. Ray tried to wake her, but suddenly, the surroundings became strange. He muttered, "This is an illusion spell. This area has been completely cut off from the outside world." Around him stood a group of people dressed in strange outfits. He immediately recognized them as members of the Reaper's Guild. Without hesitation, Ray rushed forward and activated his seal. He unleashed his Iceblade magic and launched an attack. One by one, he eliminated them all. He then turned to Lex and said, "Take care of the students." Ray picked up Clarice and ran at full speed toward the arena. Above, the battle between Amelia and Ariane was still raging at full strength. Ariane decided to use her trump card, unleashing her maximum lightning magic. She dashed forward at incredible speed, striking Amelia and knocking her hard onto the ground. Amelia couldn't block the attack at all and was thrown down with immense force. Everyone was shocked by Ariane's overwhelming power. Amelia tried to get up, thinking to herself, "It looks like I've lost, but I really didn't want to lose. Still, my body won't move or respond at all." Suddenly, she heard Ray calling her name with all his strength. At that moment, her butterfly magic activated, unlocking her full power. She stood up once more before Ariane. Ariane tried to strike her again, but none of her attacks reached Amelia at all. Ariane kept attacking with all her strength, but it was useless. Eventually, her energy began to run out. She looked at Amelia and noticed blood dripping from her mouth. Ariane then stood her ground and launched another attack. The two of them clashed repeatedly, exchanging relentless blows. Finally, the match ended with Ariane's rose being destroyed. Both of them collapsed onto the arena floor. Ariane said, "You've become so strong. I'm proud of what you've achieved." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes. She replied, "I couldn't have made it here without the help of all my friends, especially Ray. But the biggest reason I became strong was you. You were always ahead of me, and that's why, thank you." Ariane stood up and said, "It's the same for me. I always tried to be the best version of myself so that you could keep up with me. So, thank you too. I hope we can be friends again." The match concluded, and Amelia was officially declared the winner. Everyone was thrilled, including Ariane and her family. After the tournament, Amelia was taken to the hospital for treatment. Ray went to see her. She said, "I just want to thank you for everything you did for me. Time passed so quickly. Even though your training was really tough, it helped me reach where I am now. I hope we'll always be friends." Ray replied, "You put in an incredible amount of effort. During our training, I could sense your immense strength. My instincts were right. Maybe Maybe that strength is hereditary, but today you fought with everything you had, and that's why you won. After that, they went together to watch the second match of the day, which was between the second-year students. Rebecca would be competing. They all arrived at the battlefield, where Rebecca faced an opponent named Lucas. The match began. Just as Rebecca was about to move and use her power, Lucas swiftly drew his sword and struck, cutting the rose on her uniform. He won the match in an instant. Everyone was stunned by what had happened. Last year's champion had been defeated in less than a second. Lucas walked off the stage and headed toward Ray. He stopped in front of him and said, "You're the current Iceblade mage, aren't you?" Ray replied, "And you're the blade mage. I didn't know that power was passed down as well, but I figured it out after seeing the secret technique you used." Lucas smirked. "That's exactly what I expected from you." Ray then asked, "But why did you enter this duel? It was just a student match, yet you possess one of the 7 great powers. What made you join this competition?" Lucas answered, "My goal was you. I want to fight you in a duel, but right now you seem exhausted. Recover first and we'll meet again next year. I promise I'll fight you with everything I have." The closing ceremony of the tournament began, marking the end of the Magic Knights tournament. Everyone returned to their academy. Once they arrived, Ray addressed the students, saying, "Now we're preparing for the festival. I suggest our class takes charge of organizing it and turns it into a cafe for everyone." All the students were excited about the idea. Ray then went outside and had a chat with Amelia. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by news from one of their classmates. She said, "Rebecca just got engaged." At the same time, the eugenics group began making their move. Their goal was clear: to find a suitable host body for their leader. The leader told them, "Don't worry, our mission is almost complete. All we need now is Rebecca's body." The next morning, Rebecca was watering the flowers in front of her house. Ray approached her and said, "Congratulations on your engagement." Rebecca responded, "I couldn't tell you myself because it happened so suddenly, but I'll be staying at the academy until the festival ends." They both headed to the academy. Ray started overseeing his class's festival preparations. Later, he went to the library to collect some approvals. There, he found Rebecca sitting alone. He asked, "Where's the student council?" She replied, "The other members didn't show up today. It's because of my engagement. I got engaged to someone named Evan. He was originally supposed to be engaged to someone else, so now everyone is upset with me. I'm the only one left in the council, handling all the work alone." Ray told her, "Then I'll stay and help. You've helped me a lot before. It's time for me to return the favor." He sat down with Rebecca and Sierra to assist them. After some time, they finished all the tasks. As Ray was leaving, he looked back and saw Sierra running toward him. She said, "I need to ask you for a favor. I feel like something is off about Rebecca's engagement. None of us knew anything about it, and suddenly it was announced out of nowhere. Not to mention, Rebecca's family is one of the top 3 noble families. If you really think about it, something feels strange. There must be a secret behind Evan, but Rebecca won't tell me anything. I'm sure she's keeping quiet to keep others from getting involved, but maybe you can find out something from her." Ray reassured her, "Don't worry, I'll look into it." He took himself and went to his teacher's house, where he asked her about Ivan's family and learned that they were a noble family with very high magical abilities. Ray thought, since they are a prestigious family, I don't think there's anything strange. He then told Carla, his teacher's assistant, to also investigate for precaution. She told him, "Within a week, you'll have all the information." At the same time, Rebecca was at home, but her eyes started glowing, and a lot of blood came out of it. She found her sister Maria talking to her, asking, "What made you bleed like this?" She replied, "Don't worry, it's nothing," and added, "It's late now, you'd better go to sleep." Maria asked, "Is there something about your engagement?" Rebecca answered, "There's nothing at all. I'm the daughter of a great family of sorcerers, and this is my destiny." She then went to her room, sat by the door, and started crying. The next day, preparations for the festival were nearly finished, and everyone was having a great time in class. At the end of the day, Rebecca was leaving the academy when she found Ray in front of her. They walked together, talking along the way, until they saw Ivan standing ahead of them. He greeted Ray and thanked him for escorting Rebecca, then took her with him and walked away. Ray turned to leave, but as he was about to move, he found Lex in front of him. Lex took him to the meeting room, where the school director told them, regarding Ivan's family mansion, there is no evidence that any humans live there. No servants, no family members. The mansion has been abandoned for many years. years. Yet, Ivan has attended every noble family meeting, which means there is definitely something suspicious. He has managed to keep it hidden from the kingdom for years. His goal is likely the witch's eye of Rebecca. This means that Ivan is most likely the collector of sorcerer's eyes and has a strong connection to the Eugenin group. At the same time, Rebecca was crying, remembering Ivan telling her, "You are from a great family, and your father decided your fate. I made a contract with him, and your eye will be mine. If you try to resist, that's up to you. But make sure to protect your little sister." Rebecca continued crying as her eye bled again, and she started dreaming about Ray's past, when his friend Howard died in the war and how his teacher treated him at that time. Afterward, she went to bed to continue sleeping. The next day, Ray was sitting in the library when Maria, Rebecca's sister, came to see him. She said, "I heard that you are Ray, and that's why I came to ask for your help. My sister has always excelled in everything, while I have always failed. Yet, she has always supported me. That's why I want to help her now." Ray reassured her, saying, "Don't worry, I will do everything in my power to help her." As they were talking, Rebecca was standing nearby, listening to their conversation. She ran home and went to sleep afterward. That night, she dreamed again about Ray's past. After the war had ended, when they went to bury their fallen comrades, she asked him, "Who are you exactly?" Just as Ray was about to answer, he suddenly woke up. Coincidentally, he had been dreaming the same dream as Rebecca. He woke up in shock, saying, "What was I dreaming about?" Then he found his eye bleeding again. He got up from his bed and went to meet Rebecca. He found her at the academy watering the flowers, so he sat down with her and talked for a while. Rebecca said, "Today is the festival day. I'm so excited about it." Ray replied, "Let's go there now so we won't be late for the other students." They arrived and spent some time enjoying the festival together. It was a happy day for everyone. At the end of the day, Maria was leaving the festival and heading home. As she was walking, she saw someone who had the same hair color and complexion as her standing in front of her. The woman told her, "I want you to listen to me for a moment. At the rate things are going, your sister Rebecca will, unfortunately, die tomorrow." Maria was shocked by what she heard and decided to do everything she could to help her. At the same time, Ray was in the meeting room when his teacher told him, "Rebecca will die tomorrow. We are all gathered here to prevent it from happening." A stranger entered the room and told Ray, "I have only one request for you. Save my daughter, Rebecca." Meanwhile, deep in the forest, the entire Eugenin group had gathered. Their leader told them, "Tomorrow is the day of the operation. It is the day I have waited for a very long time." He then turned to his assistant and said, "As we agreed, I will leave you the Iceblade sorcerer so you can consume his engram." The next morning, Ray woke up very early and ran to meet Rebecca. He found her waiting for him and saying, "I've been waiting for you for a long time. I wanted to ask you for a favor. Please take care of my little sister, Maria. Today is my engagement day, and I will have to leave her. Try to be a friend to her and guide her so she can join the Magic Academy next year. Don't worry about me. I'll surely be fine in my new life." She then turned and walked away to meet her fiancé, Ivan. The moment he saw her, he took her to a place far from the academy and created a large barrier around it. He told her, "We are going to destroy you now, but don't worry, you won't feel anything." At that moment, the leader of the Eugenin stood with his followers, saying, "Prepare for battle now. The Iceblade sorcerer is approaching us." And indeed, Ray and all his friends arrived at the location and began fighting the monsters. Rebecca saw her sister running towards her, saying, "I came here to help you." Ray's friends told him, "Go now and save Rebecca. Leave these monsters to us. We will fight them." So Ray started running to reach her, remembering what her father had told him yesterday when he said, "Our family name is Bradley, and it is a curse upon us because of the bloodshed surrounding Rebecca's eye. That eye appears once every 100 years, and a new family member is born with it. It possesses immense power, but Rebecca still doesn't know how to control it. She doesn't even know she has this power. If she cannot master it, she likely won't live for long. That's why I ask you to try to help her." At the same moment, the leader of the Eugenin arrived at Rebecca's location and told those standing there, "I didn't expect you to act this way." He removed the mask from his eye, revealing that he was the real Ivan. The person who had brought Rebecca to this place was actually the girl who had met Maria. She said to him, "It's been a long time since we last met, my brother." But before she could continue, Ivan grabbed her with his power, saying, "I can't think straight as long as you're in front of me. I must end your life right now. You did all this just to stop my plan. Today, I will put an end to all your interference. I need Rebecca's eye to obtain complete power, and I won't allow anyone to stop me from reaching my goal." He tried to attack Rebecca, but his sister stood in his way, saying, "I won't let you do what you want." She used her magic to push Rebecca away from the area, then stood in front of her brother and struck him with her magic, transporting him to a completely different dimension. As they stood there, Ray entered the scene. Ivan's assistant said to him, "I've been waiting for you to arrive. You are the Iceblade sorcerer, I want to consume your engram. Surely, it will taste better than that of any other sorcerer. He moved to attack him, but a barrier stood between them. Ivan's sister spoke to Ray, saying, I need to discuss something with you first. My name is Lissy, one of the 7 great sorcerers, and I possess fabrication magic. Don't worry, Lydia, the director, and the others already know what's happening here. I did all this to try to help Rebecca. To save her, she will need to use all of her power, and you will have to use your ice seal on her. You are the only one who can synchronize with her. Ray asked, and what is your reason for wanting to help her? She replied, I have my own reasons, and that's why I will do everything I can to save her. But right now, my magic won't hold much longer. You need to deal with the monster in front of you first. Ray turned and saw that Ivan's assistant had managed to break the magic seal. Quickly, Ray released the power of the Iceblade and drew his ice sword, then charged at the monster. Meanwhile, Lissy transported herself to the dimension where Ivan had been sent and stood before him, saying, you don't need to waste your energy. You won't be able to touch me anyway. Ivan replied, it doesn't matter anymore. I will use all my power to destroy you. He pulled out a syringe and injected it into his head, beginning to transform into a monstrous form. Lissy said, I knew you would use this technique. It's a brain-stimulating method that enlarges your body and fills it with evil, temporarily boosting your engram. Ivan tried to attack her but couldn't touch her. She told him, as I said, I use fabrication magic to deceive you into seeing what I want. Then, she activated a special seal with her eye, completely destroying him and wiping out all of his power. He collapsed to the ground, drenched in blood, and said, now I understand the strength of the great sorcerers. Lissy replied, no, the strongest among us is the Iceblade sorcerer. Ray is on a completely different level. If there is one sorcerer capable of ruling the world, it will be Ray. Meanwhile, Ray was still outside, struggling to defeat the monster in front of him, while all his friends were fighting the smaller monsters outside. They managed to finish them off, but were completely exhausted. Just as they were about to rest, suddenly, a huge number of monsters appeared before them. They prepared to defend against the attack, but then they looked beside them and saw that Lydia and her team had arrived. She told them, don't worry, we will take control of the situation now. Karuka added, by the way, we are all part of the 7 great sorcerers. They all began attacking the monsters, demonstrating an entirely different level of power. At the same time, Ray was struggling to kill the monster before him. The monster grabbed him by his clothes, trying to kill him, but Ray drew a red-colored sword and managed to freeze the creature in place. He used all his power and a new magic exclusive to him, activating his seal and breaking the monster's strength. He collapsed beside it, unconscious from exhaustion, but he tried to get up again. He moved toward Rebecca, who was bleeding heavily from her eye, and said to her, now, I have to use my seal on you. It will be painful, but we have to do this to save you. And indeed, Ray used the seal and managed to rescue her from everything she was suffering from. Afterward, they all reunited and went together to watch the festival's closing ceremony and the fireworks display. They returned to their normal lives, and days passed normally at the academy.